Okay, so we're going to continue from this position. Mostly trying to identify which black move we're going to select, because we're pretty far in, especially if we've got 4 different lines that we're going to be giving for e4, and we've already identified that c6 is probably going to play a part, maybe d5 too. So we don't have a lot of room to make a lot of different lines, so we're going to have to pick one. And there's a bunch of different moves here. Okay, so let's let's try to understand what's going on. Clearly, white's about to play d4, and there I don't think e4 works to stop it, because you're just gonna play knight g5 and then gang up on this pawn and win it. So, so what's black gonna do? So according to the master games, it's pretty clear. Black's going to prepare for the retreat of this bishop, either with pawn to a6 or bishop b6 proactively. There's also this bishop g5 move, rook e8. Okay. Now, if we were doing a bigger array of lines, then we might cover multiple of these, maybe a6. Bishop g4 is clearly the top choice here, and it makes for some weaker players, for our weaker cohort, it makes sense because you're getting your bishop out, and it defends this pawn. It's kind of a natural move if you weren't too worried about this pawn to d4, which apparently you should be. Bishop g4 still was a decent selection for strong players. So at 11%, it's the third choice. Rook e8, also a choice. Rook e8 is the computer's choice. I'm kind of inclined. And then there's this bishop e6, which we saw nowhere else. But is the second choice, and white is doing super well. In fact, I just want to look at this. What's going on with bishop e6? So if you play bishop e6, oh goodness. Okay. d4, which is the move you're going to make anyway. Of course, because you're going to fork these pieces. You can play d4, and then somehow this is going to get resolved. It's going to take, and then bishop somewhere. If he moves the bishop, just going to play d5 and win a piece for a pawn. So the computer has it dealing this way, taking this bishop. So basically, white's getting the minors. Something like this, but for 2 pawns. So white has a pair of bishops, black has an extra rook and 2 pawns. But I can see why the computer loves this for white. Black's extra pawn is a doubled pawn. White's bishops in a position like this that's so wide open are going to be amazing. Okay, so all right, so that's why bishop e6 is terrible. But popular apparently, and it does put pressure on this pawn. So all right, so we're really, in fact, whatever we choose, I kind of probably put a note in about bishop e6 if you see this, play d4 and win. But the real choices looks like between a6 and bishop g4, which are both plausible. Bishop b6 is just too infrequently played, and honestly a6 kind of is the same idea. You're going to retreat the bishop and further back. So I think we've got to go with bishop g4. Bishop g4 is clearly a plausible move. Again, it's the third choice for masters. It's not doing super well in this cohort. It is doing really well for master players. I feel like we need to learn this one. If I were doing 2 lines, I probably would include a6 as well, but the idea after a6 looks like it's going to be something like d4. Looks like d4 is a plausible idea, although b3 is even better. I mean, clearly this is something we need to look at some point, but our cohort plays it relatively, almost 1/4 of the time. In fact, far less than either of these two. So we're going to deal with handling bishop g4. Okay. Just going to delete this. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to write a note here. I'm just going to say bishop e6, well met by d4 and d5. b5, a6 is the main move. But unpopular with this group. Okay. Something like this. Just want to make sure sometimes it doesn't take my comments and I don't know why. All right, well, I'm going to keep playing then. And we'll put the comment in. I copied it, so we got it. So bishop e3, bishop g4. Okay, clearly h3 is the idea. All right, so h3. And then what? Looks like bishop h5. I don't think that any human player would play bishop d7 or bishop c8. Takes. Just want to see what happens on takes. Looks like it's down here. Looks like it's just white's going to play on with these minor pieces. This bishop's going to be really good, especially for fighting for d5. And white's not going to have a light square bishop anymore. I feel like this is... I can kind of play this. But let's look at... Oops, I don't want to comment. I want to delete this. Let's look at bishop h5. So bishop h5 is the main idea. And I just want to see if it'll let me comment now that there's some water under the bridge. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I don't know why it didn't let me do that. Bishop h5, and then, okay. So the computer's focus, first of all, g4 is the main move in this group. It's pretty popular for the computer. Computer also is looking at d3. I mean, it looks like g4 is pretty forcing, and it's doing quite well. Let me just see if masters are looking at this. Yeah, masters are playing. They're also playing d3, and which is also here. Okay, so d3 is clearly both of these moves. These are the two moves we're choosing between g4 and d3. So what kind of positions are we looking at here? d3 looks like white's just kind of getting his playing d3. He's gonna try and play a lot of some shuffling here. Looks like we're deferring d4 clearly because this bishop on g6 is pinning the pawn on d3 to the queen. All right, so then we got g4. G4 looks pretty straightforward. We're playing g4 and then an immediate d4. So this looks much, even though the computer doesn't like it quite as much, I think I might like it more. Oh, what is this? b4? Okay, so this looks much more dynamic. So I want to go with this one. I honestly like this, even if the computer doesn't like it quite as much. I like the forcing nature of this. I like the fact that it's double-edged, cleared sort of imbalances to play with. This bishop pawn on b7 is hanging. There's knight c2. This looks like it's a mess, which I kind of like. So rather than keep it completely, and this is, look, g4 is going up again. I think the computer doesn't really prefer d3 that much. So I'm going to go with this. Let's go with this. Bishop g6 looks forced. And then d4 looks like the only idea, so let's go with that. Okay. All right, so the computer thinks that bishop b6 is like the only idea, only move, but e takes d4 is played 86% of the time. Well, this alone is a good reason to go with g4, because clearly people are going wrong here. But I gotta understand, am I gonna include b6, bishop b6, or gonna include e takes d4? E takes d4 looks natural, because I don't know, I'm trying to make this center weaker, but okay, what's going on? First I'm just gonna look at, so on bishop b6, looks like white is taking on e5. And then we got this kind of mess. All right. What happens on e takes d4? Takes. Bishop g5. Look at that. So this is the problem. There's no way to break this pin easily. There's a bishop on g6, so black can't do the same h6 g5 trick that we just did to unpin our knight. Black can play h6, but then he can't play g5 yet. So white's going to play knight d5 or something, and it's going to be pretty bad. I don't see a way that black can easily resolve this. All right, so that's why e takes d6. I mean, it's still a number 2 move, but it's way worse. But it's also, I think, there's a pretty clear idea. I don't need to map that out. Even I think bishop b6 though looks first of all looks like white's doing worse. It's the number 1 move here. White's doing way worse. I think we need to map out bishop b6. That looks way harder. But I do want to write. I do want to put in a comment. If e takes d4, bishop g5 will come like a hammer. Okay, so, and once again, I think, yeah, so it's giving me the comment here. I don't know why I moved before. Anyway, whatever. So I know this. All right, so but on bishop b6, what am I going to do? I am going to, it looks like bishop d takes e5 is like the only idea. So that the computer likes at all. So let's go with that. D takes e5, d takes e5. I see. So it likes d takes e5 because of b4, either immediately or after a queen trade. And it likes it better immediately, which I kind of like. Why am I going to draw a rook to d8? Right now, we both have something on the d file, and if I take and he takes, then only he has something on the d file. So let's just go with b4. The d file is clearly an important feature of the position. B4. The idea is that I'm making things uncomfortable for this knight. So this knight is the only thing guarding this pawn, and pushing it isn't gonna help too much because I'm gonna attack it with this. Well, anyway, okay. So I have to make a decision. The idea is that the knight can take, and then I take here, or he's gonna try to save this pawn before he takes the b pawn. So knight takes b4, bishop takes, knight takes e5 is a way to play this. This looks like a unholy mess, but might be a lot of fun. This one, e4. Okay, so the idea here is pretty clear. I'm going to just take this knight on g6, and or take the bishop on g6 with a knight, and then I'm going to win this e-pawn. So either way, looks like e4. Black is going to lose this pawn. In fact, can I even play knight g5 here? I cannot play knight g5. So I'm going to need to have some kind of note. I think that it looks like knight takes b4 is a mess that I need to know, and the computer even favors it. But let me make sure that I put in a note. If e4, knight h4, and win the e-pawn. Okay. So not knight g5. Most of these lines I play knight g5, but apparently does not work here, which is fun. Looks like knight h4 clearly wins it because you're going to take this bishop. And okay, so but knight takes b4 is okay. Knight takes e5 only. I mean, that's the idea behind b4 is that without this knight, this e-pawn hangs. So okay, so it looks like this is going to be a pretty complex position. I think this is a good time to cut off this video, and we can finish up this line in the next one. See you in the next video.